Now for the lab, I have reduced the number of categories. Now we just have the jumbo and the mid. For this program, we're going to find the heaviest or the largest animal, the lightest animal, and then we're going to get the averages for the jumbo and the mid. The difference between the homework in this lab is now in the lab, in the homework, we had a file that only consists of the weight of the animals. But now in the lab, we have more information. Now the file consists of the animal's RFID number, the name of or the type of animal, and then the weight for the animal. So we have that for each animal, the ID, the name of the animal, and then the weight. I have added those spaces just to emphasize that there are 3 lines for each entry in the file. The file really looks like this. So the first thing we're going to read is the RFID, and then the name, and then the weight. So going to the program, we have again that framework with line, read in the first line. If the line is not the end of file, we're going to do some processing for that data. And then finally, at the end of the loop, we're going to read for the next line. But now instead of just reading one thing, we're going to be reading 3 things for each animal. That means the RFID is going to go into this line variable, but the other 2 data items can be read directly from the file into their respective variables. So let's start off by creating the input. So the first input went into that line variable. So I'm going to now take it and put it in my RFID by creating a statement like this. If I put file read line in here, that would actually then skip the 2341 and put killer whale in RFID. So I want to take what's read in from the file from the first line and take that variable and copy it into RFID. Now note, I copied this in as an integer because it's an ID and I'm not using it for any calculations. I could have copied it as a string. But one benefit of the int function is that it removes that end of line without me having to do any special command for it. So as I take the data out of the line and put it into RFID, it's converted into an integer and that end of line is stripped off. For the next one, I want to read in the name of the animal. Because I don't like to type, I know that in this documentation, I put that statement here in the file. So why not just grab it and put it in the program? So now I'm reading the next line of data directly from the file into the variable without using that line variable as a temporary holding spot. I'm taking it from the file and stripping off the end of line at the same time and putting it into that variable. Some of you notice that if you don't put this backslash correctly, that it will not work correctly. So it's a backslash falling towards the left. The last thing I want to read in is the animal's pounds. So I'm going to call this pounds again, and I want to read it in directly from the file. So I'm going to grab that statement and put it right there on the line, but this is an integer, of course, so I need to surround that with the integer function to convert it to an integer before it's put into my variable. So there is my input for the program. Again, because I'm reading 3 items out of the file, the first one is read into line, and if it's not the end of file, it's converted and put into my ID, and then the next 2 items, the name and the weight, are read directly from the file into the variables without stopping at line, so to speak. So now I have my input. I want to now think about how I can find the largest and find the smallest. I talked about this in the lab and in class that I want to decouple these things and not put them together. So the first thing I'm going to do is find the largest, and I'm always going to say take my challenger and test it against my winner so far. So I'm going to call this large pounds. So I'm going to take my challenger, test it against my winner thus far, and if it wins, then I'm going to take my winner and make it equal to the challenger. So I told you an easy way to think about this is challenger faces the winner, winner gets assigned the challenger. So it's like put the challenger first and then reverse it for the second one. But not only do I want the challenger's pounds, I also want the challenger's name and ID. So I want to hold on to those 3 things. Because I'm doing this, I know I need to initialize some of these variables up here. So I'm going to initialize large pounds to, I want to find something large, so I have to set it to something really small. I'm also going to initialize the name and the ID. Now, please note, I really only had to initialize the large pounds because this is what's going up against the challenger. These other two I'm initializing, they didn't really need to be initialized, but it's a good practice to do so. So this is to find the winner for the largest pound. Because I don't like to type, I'm going to copy that, paste it, and of course, if it's the smallest, I have to set it to something really large. So I don't think I have any animals that weigh 5,000 pounds. And what's nice about this is, again, I know to find the smallest, it's almost the same identical code. The difference is my sign is now less than instead of greater than. So now if I go with that scheme of challenger facing the winner, I know which one I need by just doing greater than when I want to find the largest and less than when I want to find the smallest. Notice I have decoupled these into two separate if statements and not connected together. If I connect them together, then only one of these will be done, which means I could miss out on the largest or smallest on the first go around. We talked about that in class. If the first one comes in is 2 pounds and it's supposed to be the smallest, well, if I have, let me put this the way if I had elif, only one of these are going to execute. So if the first one that I read in, which is actually killer whale, is 2 pounds, that's a joke, then killer whale would go into the largest animal and never seen as the smallest animal. So because 2 is greater than negative 500, it would become the largest, and the elif says only look at me if you don't look at the true part. So we want to disconnect those and not have them be the same. This way the first animal that comes in will be both the largest and the smallest until it loses to another competitor. So the last thing I need to do here is I need to look at the weight of the animal. If it's greater than 200 pounds, then I want to do the average of that animal. So if I want to do the average, I need a jumbo counter and a jumbo accumulator. What am I accumulating? The pounds. Now, because the animals are being sorted out, the animals are going to go one of two ways. They can't be both. So in this case, I can use an else for this, because if the animal is not a jumbo animal, and that should be 200 or above, then it must be a mid-metal animal. So of course, you know what I did. I copied and pasted and changed the names. Now for these counters and these accumulators, I must set them before the loop. So I've copied the counter and accumulators and then copied it again. So all I need to do is change this. And to make sure I get it right, I'm not even going to change it. I'm going to copy it and paste it. And this way I know that I have the exact same spelling and everything is correct. So now I've created the scenario where I'm finding the largest, finding the smallest, and also accumulating these to get the average. Again, I don't want to do the average inside of the loop, because if I do, then I'm going to recalculate the average every time I get a jumbo animal. So I want to wait and calculate the average outside of here. So I'm going to call this jumbo average. In fact, I'm going to look and see what I called it down there. It's jumbo average, and I'm going to set jumbo average equal to, of course, I'm going to copy and paste and change this to mid average, mid sum, mid count. And now I have everything in place. The only thing I need to do now is place all of my variables in their respective places. I also forgot to mention that notice when I find out that's the winner, the order in which I assign these does not matter. What does matter is that I have the winner on the left side and the challengers being copied in from the right side into the left side. So this is the code. And again, let me finish it by putting the actual. Okay, now that I have the variables in here, I have the statements. These two if statements are separate. This one is all together. I now have the code to produce the correct output. So I'm going to go ahead and run the program with this zoo.txt, and I see that it did produce the correct output. let me talk about something that I commonly saw in the lab. What I'm going to do now is alter this code, and I'm going to take this largest and put it inside of here. And then I'm going to take the smallest and put it inside of here. So now the largest and smallest are now coupled in with the different categories. And when I run this program, I get the same output. So it appears to be correct. But when I think about it, this would not work for every data file. So here's the file here with all the animals, but I have another file here, and all the animals in this file, and there are only 5 of them, are less than 200 pounds. So let's change the code to use this. So I'm going to call this zoo small, and I'm going to run this program again. Let me clear out this. So again, the task here is to find the largest animal, the smallest animal, and then the average for the 2 different categories. But when I run this program, I get divide by 0 because there are no jumbo animals. So I'm going to comment that out. In fact, what I'm going to do is just set this equal to just 1 because I want to demonstrate something else. So I'm going to run it again. The reason why I did that was because there are no jumbo animals now. So because there are no jumbo animals, we can't get an average. So I'm going to run the program again without that. And look at what happened. I found the smallest animal, that killer whale that weighed 2 pounds. Joke, joke. That's a joke. But I didn't have any largest animal. The deal is, when I look in this file, there is a largest animal. The lion right here weighs 190 pounds and should have been the largest of the animals. But because I couple this together, I never looked at the lion because it wasn't over 200 pounds, and I can't find the largest unless I get into this if block. So by putting these together, it would not allow me to find the largest or smallest if I only had jumbo animals, or if I only had mid-metal animals. I wouldn't be able to find the largest and the smallest because they would only fit into one category. What I want to do is go back to my original scenario where I have them decoupled and not together. So I'm going to change this again to small zoo. Again, I'm not going to have an average for the jumbo because there are no jumbo animals, so I'm just going to make that 1 again. But this time when I run it, I see that the lion is the largest of the animals from Midtown, and the killer whale again is the smallest. So the point I'm trying to make here is that I have to separate these because I'm finding the largest overall and the smallest overall. If I were finding the largest of the jumbo, then I can group it within the jumbo category. If I was finding the smallest of the Midtown, then I can group it in the Midtown category. So for instance, if I wanted to find the largest and smallest of the jumbo, then I would have to put the code within that block. But in this lab, I'm finding the largest overall, okay? If I were to find the heaviest and lightest of the Midtown, then I could couple that code and put it within this else block. Hope you understand that. In your lab, in your program, you have 3 different categories, and I am trying to find the fastest of each category. So I do want to group those in, and in the lab, I did not. Okay, good luck.